So, you guys ready? We'll start. All right, I'm Rod. Can you guys hear me okay in the back? One last, yeah, good, okay. So I'm Rod. I'm a software developer, now engineering manager at VMware. And I'm going to give a talk about how we took an email client at VMware from a few thousand users to a few million users, right? And the lessons we've done in doing that. That took us about 2.5 years. We made a ton of mistakes. So I'm going to tell you some of those mistakes. I'm going to be really transparent and tell you everything that we did wrong, or at least the top things that we did wrong, and the things you can avoid as your apps grow bigger, so you don't make the same mistakes as we did. So, something about me, a little bit about me. I've been doing this for a while. Maybe you can judge from the, the hair, the little bit of hair left on my head. This is from banging my head against the wall trying to solve programming problems. This is what happens. So, if I teach you some of this stuff, you won't have the same issues. So, I've been doing software for a long time. I started out doing C++, Java, and then the iPhone came out. And I was like a kid again. I was like, oh, I can make games again now on a mobile device. You know, what I couldn't do before became too complicated to do on Windows. Now I can do on the iPhone. So I started doing 2D games on the side. This is like, I would do my regular day job doing Java enterprise development. Then I would start doing iOS games, nights, weekends. That turned into some bigger stuff. I started helping other people make games and solve performance issues in their games. And then I eventually wrote some books about iOS game development. At that time, it was a framework called Cocos 2D. And then I wrote some books with this guy you may have heard of called Ray Wenderlich, with the tutorial site. And then, from that, I moved into a company called Big Nerd Ranch, where I was managing a team of other developers that were teaching companies, developers at companies, developers at different places, how to write iOS software. And my specialty was advanced iOS development. Like, you have to do an iOS app that includes maybe a C++ SDK. Oh, that's going to be kind of interesting to troubleshoot. Or you have to do this high-performance graphics, or you have to do some other stuff. That was the kind of thing we would build a course around, go teach, and help other developers all over the place to be better at it. So that's what I was doing for a while. It was a lot of fun. And then about 3.5 years ago, I joined VMware, and in particular, I joined the Boxer team. So this was an email client that they had acquired, VMware had acquired, along with the team, who's still there. And we were looking to build that as the next generation email client. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about what Boxer is, and then my journey in that, right? So my few slides about Boxer. It's an email client. It's an enterprise email client. What's different? Why would I use it versus Outlook versus native mail? I already have an email client on my phone. Why do I need this? Well, what we really add are two things. For the end user, we add a lot of productivity things. We have calendar, we have contacts in the same app. I'm going to show you we have some easy ways for you to send folks availability, schedule meetings, join conference calls, all the kind of daily tasks that you normally have to open your laptop for. We provide that in Boxer. For the IT side, for the enterprises, we provide a lot of security. And in one word, it's digital loss prevention. So companies their employees want to see email on their mobile devices. Everybody's got an iPhone or they've got an Android phone, right? Nobody's going around with the old feature phones anymore. And they're like, why can't I get my work mail here? And the company's answer is we need to be able to secure it, right? Maybe we're a bank and you work for a bank. This is really highly confidential data. Or you work for the state. Or you work for another, maybe a pharmaceutical company or some other kind of company that has really confidential data, as most companies do, in their email. So your email on the device has to be encrypted, has to be secure, right? And that's what Boxer does. So we, along with making it more productive, we allow those kinds of restrictions, right? So maybe in your industry, for your particular company, you can't have personal data in your work email, right? It has to be separated because there's a law that says that has to be that way or some other reason. And we allow that. We allow that division. Okay? And then we've grown from, I said, when I joined, there was about 30,000 users, active users using Boxer, to over 2 million at the moment, right? These are active users. They're using Boxer every day, right? And Boxer is a set of a whole other apps. So VMware does a lot of iOS apps. You guys may not know. Most of them are enterprise focused. In fact, the rest of the slide is enterprise focused apps. But we do have a whole ecosystem of apps. Boxer is sort of the marquee app, being an email client. That's what you use the most. But we have a whole lot of other stuff, including one for tasks and nodes, secure browser for intranet sites, and so on and so on. We can go to the VMware page to see that. So I'm going to show you a demo instead of plugging in my phone. I'll show you here, because I think it'll be faster. So I literally took these screenshots, as you can see, a few minutes ago, a little bit ago. Not too long. So that's my inbox. This is what Boxer looks like. So you have mail, calendar, files, so you can browse repositories and things like that. Contacts, obviously, in settings. That's my email looked like a few minutes ago. That's my calendar. You can see I still have meetings that just schedule me for it, even though I'm here. And so you can go between, you can see all within one app. And here's some of the features. So on this side, I've jumped into a meeting that I've got, right? And I've just pressed on that. We've automatically parsed the meeting notes. And we figure out the conference calling code and allow you to dial that directly, right? Or if I'm running late for that meeting, which never happens, right? You never have meetings, as you can see in my calendar, booked exactly back to back. And of course, they're not in adjacent conference rooms, like one's on the 8th floor, the other one's on the 2nd floor, or in a different building. And so a lot of times you're running late. And we have that feature in Boxer where you can quickly go to that event, email attendees, email organizer, and then we have a quick reply. That's this icon here. That you can program all these preset replies. That's the one you see. Right, so this is running late. So I can do that, send that email, and then the organizer immediately says, oh, okay, he's going to be here. He's not missing the meeting. I don't have to reschedule. On this one, you're going to see something that happens a lot. So somebody outside the organization will say, when are you available to meet? You know, and then you use the send availability feature in Boxer. You go in, you just touch in your calendar the dates that you're available, the times that you're available. So you have to touch 2 different times here, and boom. And now I can send an email saying, I'm available at this time, and so on. So you can think of it, your regular email client, we do everything else. We have swipes, we actually hold a patent on swipes originally. Of course you can move mail, you can delete mail, you can do all sorts of create folders and all sorts of other stuff. In addition, you have all these little features that help you be more productive. And that's Boxer in a nutshell. So now you know what we're talking about for the rest of the presentation. And I tell you, okay, here's what we were doing, and here's what our customers were complaining about, or these mistakes that we made. So, good so far? Right? I'm going to go to the top 8. I think we gathered around. So we have, at the moment, we have 3 different offices for Boxer. We do development in Atlanta, Georgia, in the US, in Austin, Texas, in the US, and in Bangalore, in India. And we're soon to be opening up an office here, right? We want to do a lot. We're growing our team. So part of the reason I'm here is that we're building the mobile development team here in Sofia. As you guys may know, VMware has quite a few buildings in Sofia already. A lot of developers, some of them are here in the audience, so thank you guys. And the funny thing is we have all these Java and C++ developers and server-side developers here working for VMware. We don't have anybody doing mobile apps. Even though VMware does a lot of mobile apps. So we said that doesn't make any sense. Let's build a team here. We have all the infrastructure in place and everything else. And so that's part of the reason I'm here. We're doing a lot of recruitment efforts and other things. And that's what I'll say about that. And more about it, if you want to join me for dinner, I can tell you more about that. But on to the mistakes. On to the reason I have so little hair in my head. Right? So the first mistake was we thought MailSync would be easy. Right? We thought, hey, we already had IMAP, we were already syncing to Exchange, some personal Exchange servers. How hard could it be? You guys know, I mean, it's an email app, right? It's simple. Should be really easy. This is how our users think about an email app. They think about it this way. It looks like this picture. This is a nice picture, right? It's a rabbit doing carrots, there's some trees. There's no complexity in this picture. If you're teaching someone to draw, this is really easy, right? This is what email sync really looks like underneath. It's the same picture, but there's all this complexity there, right? Like the rabbit is oxidizing his food, right? So he's metabolizing his food, he's taking in oxygen, putting out carbon dioxide. The trees are doing the reverse, as you can see, which is in fact how they're growing. Fun fact, right? Trees actually grow from the air. They're made of carbon, and they get the carbon from the air. Right? That's why they absorb carbon dioxide. So, and you have things about sunlight, you have the migration pattern of the birds, and the flocking behavior, and all of that. So, all right, this is a nice picture, but how does it apply to actual mail sync, right? If you guys are thinking about next time you see iOS Mail, or if you're using Boxer, how does it think? So we think about mail sync like this, or our users think about it like this. I have my iPhone or other device, and it just talks to the email server, that's it. It's 2019. How many people connect their email server directly to the internet? From your looks, I'm thinking you're going to say, no one. You're right. No one connects it that way. That's a very simplistic model. You have a firewall, you have load balancers, you have a bunch of email servers. And by the way, for most enterprises, their email credentials, your username and password, your certificate, is the same to get to all your internal apps. Right? If you're working for any size company, you have one credential to get to all your apps. So that credential is really important, because if I have that, if a malicious actor accidentally has those credentials, not only can they get to your email, they can go into your benefits website, they can go into your salary website, they can go into this other app, and maybe they can hire some people and so on. So they usually have their identity server somewhere else. Right? They say, yeah, the email server is there, but we don't trust the email server is secure enough. So we're going to have another server. And anytime we make a request, right, we have to go through this whole layer. It's invisible to Boxer. We just have a host name, right, and an IP address we go against. And then we have this whole environment to go through. And you can imagine any little misconfiguration, and this starts to take a long time. Right? And then we start to have problems, syncing mail. On top of that, just to make it even more complicated, we don't just support Microsoft, right? We support Exchange, and we support these other mail servers. I worked 10 years at IBM, so I can mention that we support Lotus, but it's a stretch to call it a super efficient mail server. More like a daily mail server. And we support G Suite, which is Gmail for the enterprise. And a funny thing about Gmail, how many of you guys use Gmail for personal use? Yeah? Okay, great. Some of you guys still on your own. So if you've used Gmail, you've noticed that there's no concept of folders really. There's just a concept of tags or labels. So all your messages just have labels, right? But these other mail systems, they're all based on having folders. They're all based on like a file system. And email is like a file in a folder. If you want in another folder, you make a copy of it, right? But Gmail isn't like that, right? It's one file that can be in all the folders at the same time. So there's this, okay, where I'm going with the slide, there's more complexity here. Okay? There's one more factor. When we're syncing to these servers, Boxer is talking to them directly, right? We don't have an in-between server. There's no, we're not trying to, we don't have a server that we hit that does all the complicated work for us. We have to do everything complicated on the client. Now, you're thinking about this and you're thinking, okay, Rod, you support Exchange 2019. This is the latest thing from Microsoft, right? The latest email server that you can get. 2019 Exchange. Most clients are 2016 Exchange. You say, okay, what protocol are you using? You get a nice JSON back, right? Just like a REST API. You get a nice JSON object, and it's all good to go. What do you guys think? No, it's Exchange ActiveSync. It's this protocol that's around this time, 2007. And they've just been slightly updating it since 2007. Now, if you can remember back to 2007, right? I had flowing hair, you can imagine. But these were the top-of-the-line mobile devices, right? This was Windows CE. These were like state-of-the-art. If you're really good, you get this device that, by the way, has 64 megs of RAM. That's it. And so these were really underpowered. And as a result, this protocol that we have to use to sync mail, right, is designed to do all the processing on the server. Because the devices in 2007 weren't great. And they're great now, but whoops, we didn't update the protocol. And so you can think about it, we're talking about this old protocol, we're making the server do all this work, and now we have all this complexity in the infrastructure, right? We thought something would be simple with just syncing mail, and instead we're having to deal with load balancers, with firewalls, with latency, with a protocol that's not optimized, and all these other problems. So I would say the number one mistake that we did was underestimating complexity, right? Like when we look at something, we just optimistically assume it's easy. And this is the age-old problem. You have the most senior developers and they'll say, no, that's going to take 4 months. And you have the junior developers over here who will say, no, we can do it in like a week. Right? And which one do you pick? You know, some of the product managers will go, yeah, a week, we can do it in a week. Okay, I'll pad it, week and a half. There we go. Right? And the other guys are saying, it's going to take at least 4 months, and probably then it's not even shippable. But the truth is it's somewhere in between. And really it's about mitigating risk. Right? How do you figure out what's really the complex part and how do you solve around it? We'll talk a bit about that. So that was our first mistake. That was our biggest mistake. Underestimating how complex mail sync would be and how many little edge cases there would be. I have some stories to tell you guys over some beer about how we found these problems, how we had people troubleshooting things in subways. So literally people were like, let me test the mail sync. Okay, now I'm getting on the subway car and going in just to try to figure out some of these problems. It was that crazy. Well, that was our biggest one. So the second biggest mistake, as the team and I were talking, was when we started out, we didn't have a good method to triage feedback. We had an email address that was an alias that went to a couple of us. Like I was on that alias, a few other folks were on that alias. And that's good enough, right? You have a support email address, and they're going to email your support address, and I'll get it in my inbox, and I'm sure I'll triage it okay. And, oh, I'm on vacation this week. Well, I guess, we won't triage it this week. We'll just pick it up next week. Or I got too much email today. And so, some people would respond to some of the emails. Others would go unnoticed. And because we didn't have a process, little things kind of fell through the cracks. I call it like sand through your fingers. Like if you've been to the beach and you dig up the sand and you're holding it between your fingers, you can't really hold all of it, right? A little bit sifting through. And we weren't triaging it. We weren't checking which one of these is really a problem. Because when you get feedback, some of it's like, hey, I really would like the button on the left. Can you move this button? Can you change the label? And then you get some other ones like, my mail doesn't sync at all with this mail server. You guys should check Exchange 2013 because it doesn't seem to be working. The problem is, if you're not triaging it correctly, you pay attention to the first one and go, well, I guess maybe we got to have a discussion about moving that button and renaming it instead of, uh-oh, we got a real problem. Like if we ship this, we're going to be working the weekend and nights and so on, and we better get some sleeping bags for the office. So it was that hot at best, and as the volume increased, right, as we were growing, we were adding like thousands of users a week. This email started growing, and it was completely unmanageable. So no procedure for triaging feedback. Our email, it would email like support at VMware, and sometimes it would get to us, sometimes it would end up in some other team. VMware is a fairly big company, and they weren't really ready to handle sort of end user feedback for that. And then the last one is the really important one. Some of your users are what we call power users. They're these people that live in email all day. Now we as developers, that doesn't happen. Like I live in Xcode most of the day, or I try to. That's my happy time. Right? When I get to be in Xcode, that's the good time. But when there's other people in your companies, in your organizations, that all they do all day is email, their titles usually start with VP, or SVP, or C something, C asterisk. That's usually their title. They're just pretty much in meetings and emails the whole day. And so if they send you feedback saying this isn't working and you ignore it, it's pretty bad. And that was our number 2, if you're keeping count, 2 of 8. So the third one is very related. The users themselves had no way to contact us. So here they are with Boxer, and something about Boxer frustrates them. Whatever, sometimes it was something minor, but they have no way to tell us. They're just thinking, I hate this office email. Why doesn't it let me do a certain thing? Okay? We have, there's a story. I got a good story to tell with this, right? One of the guys that works for us, one of our senior guys, he was home, his kids were sick, and he was trying to mark an email as flagged, right? And for us, it's one of the swipes. And something on that was broken, that particular email. So here he is like swiping. And it's like reverting, right? It's not flagging that message. And he's like, I need to flag this message because I can't forget about it. It's like super important. And meanwhile, like his wife's trying to handle his kids, or they're sick right there and stuff. And all she sees is this, right? Swiping. He turns to him and he's like, what the? Are you on Tinder or something? Like, what are you doing? He's swiping. He's like, no, I'm trying to get the email out to work. It doesn't work. So not listening to those users, it's, these little edge cases, you start these little fires, right? And they grow and grow and grow. And it was because we didn't have a way for the users to talk to us. They couldn't reach development. I mean, maybe that's kind of good. We were in our little silo. We thought everything was good. But if you don't have good data on what's happening out there, it's not going to end well. I like to do this. So I have 3 little kids, and we love Legos and the Lego movie. And so if you've seen it, there's this character in the Lego movie that goes from being really happy to angry, and giving the kitty the name. So this is one of our users, and I don't mean to depict gender or anything like that, but it's just kind of funny that you have a user that's very happy, and it's like, yeah, I love this app, it works for me, it does everything I need it to do. And then one thing in the app doesn't work for them. Whatever it is, they're trying to create a calendar event, it doesn't work, and they keep trying to do it, and they're like, well, maybe the second time I'll do it. Or even worse, and this is something I think it's just us, you guys have never owned this. You have those intermittent bugs. Like it's not reproducible every time, it's maybe every 3rd time or every 5th time. Never seen that, right? Never those kind of. So we'd have those issues and it'd say, every second time I try to do this, or every few times, this doesn't work. And if you read anything on human behavior, The best way to incentivize someone to keep trying is to have intermittent rewards. So rewards in our case here is like the action works, right? You're trying to create an event or do something and that actually works. But if it works randomly, once in a while, and it fails the other time, we as humans are going to keep trying. We're like, oh, I know I'm going to get it to work. I'm going to do it again. And if it doesn't work over and over again, you get really frustrated. And so this is what's happening to our users, right? You can see it in our reviews. We started as a 4.5-star app. We're moving up. And all of a sudden, as we're getting more numbers, like the app reviews go down. And these reviews are brutal. People called it like have a few beers and then read the app reviews. Because, you know, they weren't, they weren't so nice, a lot of them. They were pretty direct. And so this was happening because we weren't listening to user feedback. All right, so that's number 3. Now I'm getting to the more interesting one. I'm getting to the code ones, right? Because the other ones are about how do we talk to users, how do we let them talk to us, and so on. So you know how you assume things when you're starting out? You're thinking about your domain space that you're developing, and you assume things. So these are the things we're assuming. No one's going to have 5 gigs of email on their phone. We use SQLite. So if I didn't mention before, we're a completely native app. We're Objective-C and Swift, and being more and more Swift every day. In fact, all new code is in Swift. And underneath our app, we're using SQLite as a data store. It's all encrypted, but that's basically it. SQLite with UIKit on top of that, and a lot of other custom code in between. So we were thinking, nobody's going to have 5 gigs of email on the phone. Nobody's going to have 10,000 folders. How many folders do you guys have? 20, 30? How many of you have lawyer friends? Ask them how many folders they have. That profession's got like crazy amount of folders, right? It's unbelievable. I don't know how they keep it sorted, but that's their, they have that. And then we thought, no way, no one's going to have. This is like 5 meetings a day, every day, 7 days a week, for the whole year, right? No one has that amount. Well, people have more than that. People have more than 10,000 contacts. I don't know 10,000 people. I don't think I've seen 10,000 people, right? Even walking around. And I grew up in Rio de Janeiro. It's 12 million people live in that city. I still don't think I've seen 10,000 people. So we didn't think this was possible, and as a result, maybe a sloppy result, we were thinking, okay, all this stuff's not possible. These are really edge cases. This isn't going to happen, right? Wrong. All those things happen. Like those are actually the middle of the line. We've seen people with 85 gigs of email on their iPhone. Really, like the whole iPhone. I'm like, you're buying an iPhone just to have email because it's almost like the entire storage is one app. And then I'm going to show you some beautiful code, right? It's not Swift because this code was written a long time ago. And it was a class that we don't really need to refactor. This is coming from our app delegate, or it used to be in our app delegate. This is from one of our view controllers that's still Objective-C. So this is what we were doing. You guys know this auto-generated method did receive memory warning. And we were just doing, oh, let's clear the cache. That should be good enough. So when you open up instruments and you ran Boxer, what do you think happened when we were looking at the memory profile, right? The app starts up, you have a climb, you do a couple things, and you're flat, and then you say, okay, receive memory warning. Simulate memory warning, simulate memory warning, simulate. See the line? It's just staying steady. iOS really doesn't like when you do that. You know, if you do that to the app, if you don't release memory and you keep consuming memory, it's just going to terminate your app. And we have a little problem, you see. We encrypted the database. We encrypted it with a user PIN. That means a passcode or a PIN that we don't know. The user knows, that's why it's called a user PIN, and we need the user to tell it to us. But we've been killed in the background, and there's no way to present a view in the background. Right? There's some other app running. Maybe they're using Facebook, they're using something else. And now we're in the background, we've been terminated. Maybe iOS has been really nice. You're like, you didn't free up memory, so you're terminated. By the way, I'll restart you so you can go along. Well, now we've restarted. We don't have the keys to decrypt the database. Can't do much, right? Because guess where the credentials are to access the email server? They're in the database, but we can't read the database. And everything else we need to do is in the database, and we can't read it because we can't prompt the user for a PIN. So it was really important for us to revamp this entire way that we do handle memory warnings and handle memory management. So my lesson here in this part in talking with you guys is to say you have these methods in your apps, right? If any of you build template apps from the have Objective-C, so these methods are there, right? They're in your view controller, they're there in your app delegate. You should be using them. You shouldn't just be, oh yeah, great, like here. We're just logging, we got a memory warning. That's all we need to do, right? Just put something to the logs. Memory warning, it's okay, whatever. No, like actually do something. Really think about what caches you have, what memory you can purge. You have a view controller that's off screen, get rid of it. Safe state. There's all these things in iOS, I mean, it's iOS 10 and later now at this point. When you have state restoration, you have all these other classes you can use. And if you're not using them, I think you're kind of being sloppy in a way, and you're asking for trouble. Again, as your user base grow, those edge cases that were once in a million start happening all the time. And you know, you really want to be able to respond to that. Okay, so that's number 4. Number 5 is we didn't think globally. We had developer teams in India, we had developer teams in the US, but we were still thinking very much like a US-centric mindset. Now granted, I'm from Brazil, I have developers in the US, from Pakistan, from India, from a bunch of other countries, even from Bulgaria, I should say, in the US, right? And even though we have all from different places, it's like we put blinders on. We're like, oh, we're just thinking about the US. So we were thinking about Gregorian calendar, which is what the US uses. We weren't thinking about Japanese calendars. We weren't thinking too much about daylight savings. Fun fact, in Europe and in South America, daylight savings is at 2 a.m. Or no, sorry, here's at midnight, and US is at 2 a.m. So if you have meetings that span those times, and some crazy people do have meetings at night. Again, who's got meetings at midnight? Nobody's got meetings at midnight. No, people do. You know, that becomes kind of odd. And there's a, you know, so this is a map of all the VMware offices. And I'll zoom in a minute. These are the VMware development centers. And we're over here. The stuff's a little off. We're actually more here. Even though we had these offices, and I could really reach these colleagues really easily. We use Slack throughout the company. We have Slack, we have Skype for Business, we even have Teams. I don't know what you use. But we have all these collaboration tools, and I have all these people in our directory, so I can easily reach somebody in Japan, or somebody here in Bulgaria, or some in other places, but we didn't. We just assumed. Right? And you're going to see that a common theme. We were being really naive about what we were doing. So I've got a little thought experiment for you guys, right? And this is based on a real problem that we did. And I'll explain to you in a minute. Imagine in Boxer you have contacts, or in your iPhone contacts. Imagine somehow I get rid of the first name and middle name field. So all you have is the last name. It's just a list of last names, right? So think about your contacts, think about the people you know. So how many Ivanovs, Petrov, or Borisovs are you going to have? Are you going to have just one?
No more words anymore.
Yeah, you're going to have a whole bunch, right? And now you're not going to know which one's which. So one of the countries in this region, it's very common for them to have the first name and last name be exactly the same. Now in the US and in other places in Europe, that's extremely uncommon. That's really the differentiator, first name and last name, right? Middle name is rarely used. It's like the extra name you put on some government forms. You need a driver's license, you have to remember what it is. Okay, in some cultures here, this is part of the middle name is the differentiator. The first name is all the same, and the last name is mostly all the same, or one of 5. So now you have these people that had their whole company contacts, and we thinking, you know what, we're going to optimize this field. We don't need the middle name, let's hide it. And we shipped it, because we checked it, it works good. We checked it in Europe, it works good. In India, it works fine. Ship it. And then the customer calls us and goes, what have you done? I can't call anyone. Like I don't, not even that. But we have caller contact export, right? We export things for caller ID and for a call kit. So guess what starts happening on their phone? Everyone is the same, right? All these numbers is the same person, the same first name, same last name. It was a mess, right? We had to do a hot fix. It was one of those where let's go back into the office, let's figure out how to turn this back on. Find the pull request, let's revert it. Create a .release. So my lesson here is think globally, right? Don't think just about Bulgaria, or just about US, or just about EMEA. Think really globally when you're developing your app. What's that?
Which is the country?
Which is the country? It's Saudi Arabia. Yeah. So they have a lot of Mohammeds as the first name and very similar last name. Among other ones, not just those, but among other ones. Yeah. So I'm going to include a reference from Apple here. There's an excellent talk if you haven't seen it. It's really interesting and technical and informative on calendar calculations. It's way back from WWDC 2011. So it's 8 years old, but it's still super relevant because it's NS date. And NS date hasn't changed much. So if you've used an NS date or NS date formatter, this is a really cool video to see. The slides will be available after. It's 117 is the number. So if you just search for 2011 117, you'll see it. I recommend you to watch this. It's really informative. You get to learn a lot about these different calendars, which are quite interesting, and how to do dates. And what happens when you add a date, when you add a month to a date, but then you add 2 months at a time, or you add 1 month and then you add another month, and so on. So there are differences to doing that, right? You end up with different end results depending how you add dates. And it's pretty complicated. You would think humans would have come up with one calendar because we're all on the same planet, but gotta have variety. So that was our 5th mistake, right? Not thinking globally and making those silly mistakes. Number 6 was no push notifications. So as the app was maturing, as the app was getting more and more users, we were, we had push notification for IMAP, we didn't have it for Exchange. And other apps were starting to add push notifications. And they did it very easily. They put a server in between, they sent your credentials up to the server, and the server would check for email for you. And when they got an email, it would send a push notification to the app, right to the device. There's a little problem with that for most of our clients. You guys guess what it is? Anyway? Security. Right, security. So we don't want to push the credentials anywhere. So we had to come up with a solution where we don't escrow the credentials, right? So we had to build one. We have push notification now, but we had to build a solution where we can talk to Exchange and set up a webhook, right, to be notified of changes to the inbox folder, and then immediately get rid of those credentials. So we don't persist them in storage at all on the server, right? They're used temporarily for a split second, and the keep alive connection is kept open. And that means that every so often the app has to resubscribe and reset up that connection, right? And we have a whole system set up where we call it ENS, Enterprise Notification Server, where it sends push notifications to the app, silent and non-silent ones, and then you get your instant notification. This solved a whole bunch of problems, and not just on iOS, but on Android, right? If you're an iOS app, you normally get 30 seconds to run in the background. That's it. So if the user puts you in the background, you get 30 seconds. If you try to run 30 seconds or 31 seconds, Apple says, sorry, terminated, and you're done. And again, our database is encrypted, so if we launch again in the background, it doesn't do us any good. So we had to kind of stop sync right away when we went to the background. And push notification gives you an additional 30 seconds, right? But you can't abuse it. You can't go and just keep sending push notifications. We have to have real messages and do that and sync to the server. So that's what we were doing. We set up this whole service to do that, and that was sort of our big miss of not shipping with that from the beginning. Waiting too long to develop push notifications and get that out there. Right? We let our competitors kind of get ahead of us. So that was, and it was really technically challenging to build that, especially because the protocol that we were using didn't support these webhooks, didn't support these callbacks from Exchange. So we had to do a different protocol that Microsoft supports and had to build that on the server side. So take the engineers that are used to iOS, tell them they've got to do done that development for a little while. Most of them are not too happy, but debugger is nice. I'll say that. Visual Studio. And all right, so on to the next one. Again, it's you can see our naivety in doing some of this, right? Our lack of experience, maybe. We were just trying to bootstrap everything as we went. So we used to have a kind of a weekly talk with VMware support. We had different teams. And in VMware, they sit in different floors, right? So you have development, and we're kind of left to our own floors. People don't bug us too much. And then you have support, because support's always on the phone. You don't want them sitting next to you. Like, you're not going to get any work done. So we put them as far away as possible. We give them the nice upper floors because, they have a view or something. But then we try not to go up there because they're always complaining about something. They're never like, yep, works great. So, stop talking to them. We're like, it's really annoying talking to you guys. Just do your work, we'll do our work. And we're happily along developing and doing our thing. And support says, hey, can we get a little help? Our volume of call just keeps growing up, like every week. You guys are still releasing the software, and the call just keeps going up and up and up and up and up. So that was, a key mistake for us. We weren't listening to what was happening there. We didn't know what the customers were really saying. Again, they didn't have a way to do direct feedback to us. We weren't listening to what support was telling us. So that was kind of letting some fires grow into really big fires and really big problems, because now we have to address it. Now we have a whole bunch of pissed off customers instead of a few pissed off customers and mostly happy ones. But we resolved that, but this is sort of our big mistake. So when your apps are growing, when they're small, right? Set up a triage process. Set up figure out what, if you have a support organization, or if you have a support person, or if that's you 2 days a week, right? Figure out how, when you guys grow bigger and that becomes a whole team, how are they going to get information to development? How are they going to tell you, hey, these are the things we're spending the most time on. No one can find this one button. Can you make this button more visible? Can you make this touch area bigger because no one can hit it, right? Or these two buttons are so close together, I don't think they're even following the HIG, the Human Interface Guidelines, right? Because you put them too close together. And developers will say, well, design says us that, so it must be right. No, you gotta use your brain. You gotta talk to them. All right, so one more that's interesting. That's the last one for the 8 of things we did wrong. When I get to the things that we did right, you guys should copy. We have a lot of open source libraries that we use. I mentioned Google Lumberjack. There's a ton of other ones. And VMware is very big about using open source and contributing to open source. So they really encourage us to take parts of our app, pull it apart so it doesn't have the proprietary VMware stuff that we can't show you, and then open source that as a project, right? And maintain the project and spend time on it. So we have open source libraries in Boxer. And of course, every release, when we take an update, we go through all the changes. We go through the change log, we look at the diffs, we do all of that. But we also have internal libraries from VMware. Guess how much due diligence we do on those? They're a little bit like something I saw when I was walking around on site. So I saw this thing, and it's actually near the cathedral. This is here in Bulgaria, in the streets of Bulgaria, and I thought, wow, that's... I'd hate to be that phone technician that goes there and has to figure out which line is broken. Because I'm going to say all of them, just cut the whole thing and rewire. This is quite interesting. Or maybe it's a LAN party and they're getting it all set up. But, this is what our internal libraries look like, right? They had to support all this stuff, and nobody said, oh, you should deprecate that feature. Deprecate? What is that? Just add another feature. Just, method name 1, method name 2, method name new 2, new 3. You've never seen this kind of code. So we had this sort of stuff. We went ahead and integrated and just started building with it. And worse, we started shipping with it. So here we are shipping stuff that's not quite ready to be production. And by the way, we rely on those libraries for encryption, a lot of data connection, and other things. Just really important parts of the app that we should have tested, and we didn't, right? And so as part of that, let's say like it's a sub point, as part of that we get a lot of bugs. And the developers were getting really frustrated with how many bugs we had and how long regression was taking. At this time, regression was taking 2 weeks. So we're trying to release every month. We're not making it. We're late all the time. And regression is taking forever. And we're finding bugs in regression. We're finding P0s, really catastrophic bugs. And we're mad about that. We're mad about other things. The performance of the app was up and down. One release was really fast. The next release was really slow because, this is internal library that's blocking the main thread. Why didn't we check that, right? And we weren't using instruments. So it's like my typical developer question. What do you do if you hit Command-I in Xcode? The junior developer will say, I hit cancel. So I don't know what that dialogue is. I don't want to see instruments, right? They're like, close. I don't want to profile. No, it's not. Instruments is your friend. It will tell you things, really important things about what's happening in your app. And so we started implementing, using instruments every time before we released. So we started with, we know we have a final build for release. Let's run it through instruments. Let's do a leaks test. Let's do a CPU utilization. Let's do some common scenarios, right? Everybody's got email. We can set up sync email, and we can do a couple of other things. And we actually discovered that you can run, I know, you probably already know this, you can run instruments from the command line. You can actually have it run and then export that data and then parse that data in the command line. So you don't even have to do it yourself. You can set up a build integration machine to do that. Take your app, install it on a real device, run it, right? Collect instrument profile on that device, and then analyze the data. If anything looks off, if there's any deviations, then you shouldn't ship that out, or at least you look at it, right? So to recap the 8 bad things, we underestimated complexity, we didn't triage feedback, you can see here, we didn't listen to the user. Yeah, memory warnings are real. Don't just log them, do something about them. You didn't think globally, you gotta think about if you get rid of first names or last names. First or middle names in Bulgaria, and you left with the same 3 last names most of the time. No push notifications, so users want to know about email. They want to know when the email comes. They don't want to know 2 hours later when you open the app. right? They want to know right away. Not paying attention to what's happening, and we didn't validate internal libraries, right? Okay, so that's the bad stuff. Don't make those mistakes. Now, to the good stuff, to the stuff that you should do, or at least, hopefully, you should do some of these, and I think it would help you, because they helped us. So again, we were whiteboarding all of this as a team, and we were talking about our experiences. A lot of us have been in software development for a while, we've been in Boxer for a while. So we thought about, okay, what are the top best practices? What are the single best things that we did that made it happen? And we stack ranked them, right? We don't stack rank employees, but we stack ranked these sort of best practices. Number one thing, if you do nothing else, right? If you don't do anything else to talk about this talk, do this. Have a healthy beta. You can have 10,000 beta users in iTunes Connect. You can have 10,000 external email addresses. Like, try to get to that number, right? Try to get to multiple thousands, and in different places. Don't just have everyone in, one country or one city or one location. Unless your app is just about, Sophia. But if your app can be used everywhere, then try to get a representative user base. And as big as possible, because people aren't always going to give you feedback. But if you have a larger sample size, you will get folks giving you feedback, right? And that feedback is important. These are users that are getting, and these are your special users. You've got to treat them really, really good, right? In Boxer, we used to have, because of the Boxer name, we used to call them Boxer heavyweights, like boxing heavyweights. So these are guys that submitted a lot of feedback. And we would send them stuff. We'd say, you know what? I'm going to send you some t-shirts. We'll send you some stickers. We'll send you some other stuff. Because, it's like you're helping us make a better product. And they would test it and say, oh, this works, but you know what? Whenever you guys send me a new build, this keeps breaking. Can you guys stop breaking this thing? And we would go figure out what that was and why would it keep breaking? What was causing the side effect to do that, right? So have a healthy and active beta, right? Promote it. Testify makes it really easy now. Back in the day, you used to have to ask for their email address, and you'd send them some instructions and say, okay, listen, I've added your email address, and I'll go and download Testify and do this, blah, blah, blah. You don't have to do that. There's a public link. I mean, literally, it's super easy. Give them a link and say, open this on your iOS device, right? And they press on it, it does everything for them. It's super easy. There's no reason not to do that, right? And then this part's important, but a lot of people miss. So you get all this feedback, do something about it. Even if it's just to respond, I got it, we're not going to do this, like set the right expectation. I got it, that's a product request, we filed it, I don't know if we're going to get to it in 2019. Right? These are your beta testers, you own them, honest feedback. Don't say, we're right on it, we're going to get to it ASAP when you have no intention of getting it. Like, be truthful. If you're not going to get to it, tell them. They won't be frustrated later, right? So we encourage this a lot. We're always working with a beta team and with other teams around VMware to get users on. The minute we get a new customer that's trying out a pilot, we add them to beta. The minute we get a customer that's signed on, we tell them, look, we want users in your organization to be in beta, right? This is fairly stable software. We talk to them about our methodology, other things, and we say we want your feedback. You get to try the software first. And it's usually fairly safe because you can just jump back to production. If worst case, we ship an app that doesn't work, that crashes on launch, right? All you gotta do is delete it, launch the App Store, download Boxer, and put in your credentials again, you're good to go. Right? Sync your email, and you're there. So it's not like your phone is bricked or anything like that, it's not catastrophic. So it's no risk to being paid. And on top of that, in order to make this easier, we added this option right within the app. So remember how I said the user didn't have a way to do that before? Well, we made a way for them to do that. And I know you're thinking, okay, Rod, that's smart. You're just going to send the email, but what happens if the email sync isn't working? How are they going to send the email? So we're not doing that. We actually send S3. We actually push it up to a service and we host on Amazon. And then, so it doesn't matter if your email server's down, if it's misconfigured, or if it doesn't work. We use to send feedback to get that. And then we did a step better. Instead of that becoming an email on our side, we put it on a ticketing system. So we have a whole ticketing system where we can rank and we review these, we can respond, and then we can get them into JIRA. So we use JIRA for stories and bugs and so on, right, for development. You guys can use different tools. JIRA is a common one, there's many others of the same type. And this is a way for us to track it as a feature or a bug, and then actually have some resolution on it and get back to that person. Say, hey, we got your bug, we're working on it, we got this far, it's fixed in this release, right? So they can give us a lot of feedback, and they can do that. And we also added that if you're on test flight and you take a screenshot, because you know you can get a screenshot notification right after the screenshot's taken. we launch the feedback screen and say, hey, you took a screenshot of Boxer. There's probably something wrong. Do you want to report it? Do you want to send us the screenshot and we can tell what's going on? And with that, we include all the logs, right? So not only we know what version they're on, we know their database size, we know all this other information that helps us diagnose where they were at when they had that issue, right? But this helps a lot. This is a really good best practice to have a healthy and active data community and be able to act on it. The next part is very similar. It's called telemetry. So this is, for the users that are not reporting, how do you know what's happening in the field, right? How do you know if a feature is working? Do you guys do this today? Do some of you do this? Where you track how a feature is working or not working or who's using it? Your hands. No one? It all works. Everybody's using everything, right? So it was a little bit like this. Like we had to set up like, are we sending stuff to Big Span? And we also got to tell you you know, are we actually listening to what's happening out there? We added this new feature, but it's buried in settings. Did anybody actually turn that toggle? How many users? How many users have this version? How many users have turned this toggle on? How many have turned it off after they turned it on, right? And we started thinking, this is really useful. We're going to start collecting all these metrics, again, with users' permission, right? And we have a system to get rid of it if you file GDPR and say, I don't want you to collect this data. And it's anonymized data, so I don't know about a particular person. Like, we don't send up their email address or anything like that, right? We just send up some general data that we can see about the Boxer population in mass. So one of the things we track is how long database queries take. And again, it's our local SQLite database, right, on device. This normally shouldn't be a bottleneck, but if you get big email, right, and a lot of counter data and other things, then all of a sudden you can't memory map that file anymore because it's too big, and you can start to run into performance issues. If you guys have done any apps that write a lot to Flash or read a lot from Flash, it's very similar to a hockey stick. Performance is great. This is I'm going this way. If I go this way, it's number of records you're reading, right? That's number of rows you're reading from a database table. So it's great, it's great, it's great, it's great, it's great, it's great. This is how much time it's taking, you know? 0.01, 0.01, 0.015, 0.018, 0.018, 4 seconds. Right? Once you get to a certain part where the paging isn't working, where your page size is too small, where your cache size is too small, other things like that, the performance just drops off a cliff. Right? Instead of being fast, your app just starts to be slower and slower and slower. And that means I'm trying to scroll, I'm trying to see the next 50 emails that I got, I'm trying to look at my calendar and the calendar isn't loading because it's still trying to do the other stuff. Right? Have you ever, any of you guys ever remember when Airbus, I'm going to tell you a different story here. When Airbus first launched their fly-by-wire and the airplanes were doing this, right? Because the pilot was giving all the input and there was a lag and the lag the fly-by-wire system was just processing the inputs sequentially. And so if it started to get behind, it would do the wrong input, and the pilot's like, put their nose down, pull up, and it would pull up too much, and so the plane started oscillating until they had to shut it off. So we were starting to do the same thing. Right? We're making all these queries on the email side. You've switched to the counter side. Why are we still making those queries? We can wait. Like, the user is the most important. We should be doing what they're asking for. So we collect this data. I've had to blank out all of it, but this is actually queries that run slow. And normally you should see them down here, right? These are not slow, the ones on the bottom. These guys are really bad. And I wanted to point out the purple one, we kind of expect, because it's a commit transaction. So we have some transactions where we're doing a lot of changes in the database. We expect those to take longer, right? If you've done any database work, committing a transaction is the heaviest work you can usually do, right? Queries are really fast, you're not modifying the data. Transactions is where you have to lock down the database and you have to actually commit these across multiple tables. So we expect that one to be high, but this is actually the highest. So there was an update that was happening. It was actually taking the longest. And not only that, there was an update on contacts. What are we doing on contacts? This is a mail client. We have contacts, but I mean, that's the least used portion of Boxer, right? Think about what you use every day. Mail, calendar, and then like a long distance down, it's contacts, right? You open the contacts app once a day, maybe twice a day. So we had some wrong stuff in that code that we weren't looking at, and that was driving up our database, and that made the rest of the app slower, right? Because if this is using all of our cycles for the database reads or writes, then we don't have much left to do email and to do calendaring, and so the app becomes laggy. It's not that the UI is laggy; it's that it can't get any data to display to you. So you're trying to scroll, and I don't have the data to give table view, right? I don't have the data to give collection view for this thing. It can't generate those cells because I can't read the database. So having that telemetry in the field is what allowed us to be able to know what was going wrong and act on it. So we acted on this within one release. Right? So it's sort of we saw this spike up, we figured out the problem, a month later we had a fix for that. Okay, the next thing we did that I think is a good pattern is to have continuous integration. So we use the whole Atlassian suite that happens to be something that VMware brought into, so we have an enterprise license for, but there are many, many choices out there for this kind of thing. We don't want developers doing manual work, right? So we set up a system we put up a pull request, it runs all the unit tests, it runs a lot of integration tests, it runs a lot of verification on that, and then gives you a little green checkbox that you can merge. And if it doesn't give you the green checkbox, for whatever reason, guess what? The merge button is grayed out. You can't merge that pull request. So you've got to figure out what that is, right? And so you've seen this kind of a continuous diagram or an infinite diagram. Basically, you plan what you're going to do, you develop it, and then this part is what's checking that what you've written hasn't broken stuff, right? And then of course you deploy it, and then you monitor it in the field. That's maybe the operate here, right? And then you get your feedback that we're talking about, and you continue. You plan the next set of features and so on. And we use the Atlassian suite, but that just happens to be our choice at VMware. You guys have a choice of doing a lot of other ones. I want to put the slide up there. There's many, many, many apps for each of these components, including for continuous integration. Some of you may use Jenkins, if you like Java, or other ones to do that. But the important thing is have a system that can build your app automatically without you doing Command B in Xcode. Have something that can run Xcode build for you, even if it's a shell script on your desk, on your laptop. Right? Even if it's something where you say, you know what, I go to sleep at this time, I do this, or every time I do a merge, I run Xcode build in the background. Right? Make sure you do something like that, because it helps, it pays off. The other part that pays off is static code analysis. It's like a freebie, right? We have our developers reading code. That's expensive time. I have a lot of the team reading over code that you've done. But it's easy to get a machine to read that code and give you analysis on it. Give you at least a static analysis on it, give you code coverage. All that data, Xcode dumps for you for free. It's literally like command line parameters, and they'll tell you, oh, this method is a dead method. Nobody calls it. Like I've compiled your whole entire app. Nobody's calling this method. Why do you have it? And you keep shipping with that code. It's making your binary bigger. It's making your app more difficult because people think it's actually doing something. That's not doing anything, right? Oh, hey, this class that looks really important, say something like encryption processor or something, doesn't have code coverage. What? And so doing this really helped our app, right? We plugged into Sonar, and we collect code smells, code coverage, bugs, and so on. And what we've done is we turn all of these into merge gates. That means if you put up a pull request for Boxer, and the code coverage in your branch goes down from the default, like from the development branch, you can't merge. People got really mad about this because they were like, but the classes I'm modifying don't have any code coverage. Well, but you're adding code to them, right? Yes, but the class doesn't have any code coverage. It'd be a lot of work to add it. Well, we have to do it sometime. And your task involves modifying it, so let's do it. So there was rumble for about a week, and everybody got the hang of it, and their code coverage numbers went up, right? It went up and up and up, because it makes for better code, right? If we know the code is coverage, at least to some extent. Now, we don't know the quality of the unit test code, so there's some variation there. But at least if the code is covered, we're doing some tests on it. Uncovered code, you're doing no tests on it. You're literally just shipping it and hoping it doesn't break in production, right? Okay, the next one is going to seem obvious. Ship on time, right? And Steve Jobs' code is real hard to ship. I also like the Dr. Seuss one. Do what you say and say what you do. So here's our mistake the first 2 years. We would tell our customers, your bug is fixed. It's going to ship next week. And we also had to put in 20 other features into that release. Okay, we worked on it for a month and a half. How many guesses did actually ship next week? We get angry calls from them and say, I know, we found these other bugs. I promise you, 2 more days we're going to ship it. I know it. We just solved this little thing. It's a one-line code change. It's no problem. It's going to be fine. And then we wouldn't ship the next week either. So we were always late in our releases. So what happened is customers didn't trust us. And they basically would say, you know what? You guys don't know when you're releasing. So either you release my fix now, or I don't want to talk to you anymore. So a big thing that we improved with was shipping on time. Right? This is a picture of people waiting for a late train. This is what I want you to think about with your customers when you say you're going to ship a certain time and you don't. This is how they feel. All these people showed up at the train stop and they wanted to be at that train and they wanted that train to show up on time. That train didn't show up on time. So how do they all feel? Is anybody happy? No one's happy in that picture, right? They're all like, where's my train? I'm going to be late. Same thing. If you want to build trust with your customers, you have to ship on time, right? And the only way you're going to ship on time is to minimize risk, right? Think about how much risk is in those pull requests, how much risk is in the features that you're doing, right? Try to minimize it, try to test around it, and ship with what you have that you're confident in, right? And have your stuff ready early. The best way to ship on time is to be early. Do your homework early and have the builds ready early. And that's what we do. We just shipped yesterday, actually. And for the last 6 months almost, we've shipped every release on time. Like this year, in 2019, we shipped everything on time and early, right? Because we've had everything ready. Like this release, the 5.7 release, we had ready last week. Okay? So it was already ready to go, and we were just like, okay, we'll do some more verifications and so on, but it's ready to go. The other part is, along with shipping on time, is inform the users, right? Let them know when something is affecting the app. Let them know, hey, those network that I was talking about, those load balancers, those firewalls, if they're causing problems, let the users know. We did this just in the last release, and it's fantastic. I really like having something like this. We have a health check within the app. There's a big client of ours, one of the many, and they came to us and said, you know, my user base, we have, I'm talking here about 40,000 users. We have 40,000 users using Box, right, in this company. And they said, we're getting a lot of complaints. They're really complaining about this and this. And they gave us a whole spreadsheet of complaints. And we start looking at the spreadsheet, and I'm like, no, we fixed this bug. Is there a regression? Like, did this thing break again? We fixed it like 6 months ago. And so we pulled a report of what versions they were on. Right? And lo and behold, half their user base is on a version from 6 months ago. And then 25% of the user base is on a year-old version. Think about the apps you develop, apps that you've developed for a year, and think about if some user is running a version from a year ago, and then giving you complaints. You're like, man, come on, seriously, turn on auto updates. But see, enterprises can turn off auto updates on company-owned devices. And a lot of them do that because they want to test the software. They're thinking in like more of a old mentality, not a mobile mentality, right? Our phones, you plug it into power, it's gonna charge, it's gonna update, right? I wanna have updates when I wake up in the morning. I want my apps to be updated. So we had a lot of issues where users were running old versions. Of course they have bugs. We're fixing like 60, 70 bugs every release. If you're 10 releases back, you're 700 bug fixes that you're missing, right? It's a lot of different stuff. But these aren't all critical bug fixes, a lot of them are like small little things. But still, you're missing all those improvements. Like those database improvements we did, you're missing those. And so the first thing we did is we checked the app version. It's an easy thing to do. And it's green if it's your app version, if you're on the latest version. It's yellow if you're 1 back, and it's red if you're 2 back. And it badges right on the main part of the app. You don't see it here, but we have that tab bar with mail count and files. It turns red. So it's like really obvious. Hey man, need to update. Sync health, it goes back to that. Remember I was showing all the servers that we connect through? We check the latency, right? And if there's a lot of latency, then we turn that orange. And if there's really a lot of latency, we turn it red. And we say, look, we're trying to sync your email, but your server is taking 22 seconds to respond to us. So either you've placed your email server on the Mars orbiter, right? And it's like taking really long to get to it, or there's something messed up in your environment, and it's not Boxer, right? So you need to talk to your IT admin. And then if push notifications are turned on or not. And there's one more feature we had at the bottom here in gray. We actually listed everything that was restricted. So one of the #1 asks that people come to Boxer and they say, you know, I like Boxer, I really like it, it works really well, but I wish I could have my personal account. Now, I wish I could have my company account, my personal account. Especially my personal calendar, because so-and-so, I have all my activities in my Google Calendar, and this is my work calendar, I want them together so I'm not scheduling a meeting when I'm supposed to be somewhere else, blah, 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 right? We support that, but companies can turn that off. And so a lot of companies were just turning that off. I don't want the personal accounts, I don't want this. And they were thinking we didn't support it. They're thinking, your email app, how come you can't do this? Every other email app does this. We do it too. But your admin may not have chosen to do it for whatever reason. So I was like, let's just call that out. Right? Like in this case, I can't call out contact, I can't export contacts. So let's call that out. Hey, I can't print. So someone says, I'm trying to print this email, it's a boarding pass. I can't print it. Well, it's not because of us, it's because of your admin. So let the users know what's going on, right? Have meaningful release notes. You know what our release notes used to say? Bug fixes and improvements. You know what the next release note would say? Bug fixes and improvements. You know, and I said, come on guys, like, all the other apps, they don't just say bug fixes and improvements. They actually say something. And then we get the legal team involved. And they're like, wait a minute, that's not proper VMware speak. You must have a, you know, you must say it in a this way or that way. And so we say, no, we don't need to validate everything. They don't need them. They don't need release notes. The users read the release notes. So we started including actually what's in them. We started saying plus for new features. We started saying minus for bug fixes and improvements and other things. And you can see here, these are the last, this was released yesterday. So you can see we've added those features, we put what they are, we put some of the bugs, okay, this one does say bug fixes and improvements, but you know, we have more specific ones that we put. And we explain the app behavior to the users, right? So we have something like this, when they're in the app and they try to do something that doesn't work, we gray out the icons. I know the Apple Human Interface Guideline says if the feature is disabled, hide the button. But if you do that, users get really confused because they're like, I used to have this button, but now it's gone. Why did you remove my button? So we make it gray, and when they touch on it, we bring up a UI alert basically that says, hey, this feature is disabled by your admin, right? And you can do something about it. You can email us, you can do something else. And so we allow them to do that. And I'll go back here for just a second. On this screen, we actually allow them to send something to their admin or to us. Right, so if they press that button, it sends the whole content of this report along with the logs, and they can get that information to us. Right? It does the send feedback. Okay, so listen to your users, explain what's happening to them, and last but not really least, you've got to make sure your developers are happy. Right? Are they working on technically challenging things? No developer I've worked with, including myself, ever likes when they're getting towards the end of a sprint. And here comes the PM, and they got that look on their face. Like, I just got off the phone with our largest customer, and they really need this small feature. Can we fit this feature into the sprint? Can we? No, I kind of promised to them, you know, sort of, that this would be there. And you're like, no. Like, you know, you start asking, what can we drop then? One, we're at the end of the sprint, so it's unlikely we're going to get anything in. But two, can we drop some of these other features? Can we not ship them and, you know, not do them later? No, we can't drop them. We committed. Then the other customers will be mad at us. So we kind of streamlined that whole process, and we said, no, look, this can't keep happening. We have to have an honest conversation. We need to go back to that customer and say, here's why we're not delivering that feature right now. Here's what we're working on right now. And it turns out, this is a novel concept, but it turns out, at the other end of the line, at the other end of the video call, and your customers, they're human. If you give them the details, they understand, and they have something to take to whoever's asking them, why doesn't Boxer have this yet? Right? They have that detail. So providing that transparency, even though it was really difficult, is what helped us, right? And what helped us make more development. So if you have happy developers, you have productive developers. If you have unhappy developers, you have more developers. They're going to leave. This is a very hot field. This is a very competitive field. If you're a very good iOS developer or an Android developer, and you're not happy at your current employment, you're not likely to stay there very long, right? You're not just motivated by it. So we had to ensure we have real stories. We had to ensure we were explaining to our development team, how are we going to actually use this feature? Because they would look at these features, some of these features, and they say, that's such an arcane request. Why do we need this? I say, we really got to flush out the user story. Like, here's why this customer is asking for this. Here's why it's important to them. You know, so we can understand. Here's what the revenue is for this feature for VMware. Right? This is why we're working on it. And this is how it's important to us. Who, why, when, right? The other thing we did to make developers happy is eliminate most of manual regression. So we merged the development and the QE teams together. And we made the development team as a whole do manual regression. Think about that. You guys have QA teams, QE teams? Yes? Okay. So you know what they do? They do a lot of automated testing, but they do a lot of manual testing of your app too, right? There's a lot of this. Right? Okay. Now imagine that becomes your job for a week. Oh yeah. Everybody's like, no. But I need a lot of beer that week. This is brain dead. I can't do this. He said, yeah, but guess what? You're going to be doing that every month. 1 week of the month, you're going to be doing it. Or you can automate it so you don't have to do it. No one else has to do it. And so pretty quick, we started out with about 10 days last year for regression, manual regression. Went to 5 days pretty quick in the beginning of this year. Then went to 3 days, 2 days, and now I can say, as this last release that we shipped yesterday, 1 day. And it wasn't even a full day. So in the next 2 months, we'll get it to 0. So we're not doing any manual regression. And I think that's it's my secret sauce to get anything automated, programming-wise or development-wise, is make developers do it. We hate to do repetitive things, especially sort of brain-dead repetitive things. Right? So it's easy for us to automate that. Make sure no one's stuck with bugs, right? You get these, we have different developers, some are really good at fixing bugs. Right? And so the tendency, as your engineering manager, some of you guys on the team, is saying, that person, they're going to be fixing the bugs. They'll be fixing all the bugs. Oh, this is a really hard bug, you have it again, have it again, have it again. And I found very few people that like to do that for months on end. Some people like to do it for a little while, and they're like, I'd really like to do something new, I start saying. And that really is like code speak for, man, I'm really sick of doing bugs. I want to do some like greenfield engineering. I want to think about a process. The only time I've used a whiteboard is to figure out this convoluted code you guys wrote 3 years ago, right? I need to work on something where I'm designing something. I'm doing my architecture skills. So make sure that you're rotating people around. And this means if any of you are in charge of your backlog or working with the PM, you got to do your homework. You got to look at what's there. And when you say, hey, I need you to fix this bug, it's not this bug, but hey, I have a cluster of bugs in this area. Right? We have a cluster of bugs around this particular thing encountered, this time zone thing that's related to something else. We need to fix them all together. Right? And then they feel like they have accomplishment. And then after that, you're onto a feature and someone else is onto a bug. Right? And the other thing you can do to make developers happy is to reduce the cycle time from commit to ship. So I'm going to use an example from this month because it's really fresh in my memory and I had the screenshot from this. This is the health check feature. I know this looks like a different platform we're not going to mention in an iOS meetup. Right? We just use those as mock-ups. That happened to be what, and that wasn't even us, it was the UX team, so they used those as mock-ups. But forget that this is a different platform. This is the health check screen. Right? We designed it and we implemented it in a week. So this was literally done on a Friday. On Monday we started development of it, and on Friday we had it merged in, the whole feature. Right? And that's really nice to have something like that, to feel like that's what you accomplished for the week. Right? It was really great for our US team, it was really great for our development team to say, I've taken something from concept and said, this is what it's going to look like. The development team started on it, 2 developers started on it on each platform. And we're right at the back end, we knew what the UI was going to look like, more or less. So we start building those classes. And then as we get the elements and the assets from the UI team, we're plugging them in, and the feature shipped. So from that to shipping feature that you can test now, like in a week. And that makes everybody happy, right? It's nice to see your code go from when you merge it in to production. You don't have to wait months until your code's out in the field. Right? So get to the end. The recap, healthy and active beta. If you don't remember anything else from this talk, have a healthy beta community, right? And then the other stuff is all about listening to what's happening in the field. Telemetry. Like what? Have your app beacon out. Hey, the user's using this. Hey, this is happening. Hey, this thing is slow. This thing is not slow. Static code analysis, do continuous integration, ship on time. Right? Do what you say you're going to do. Tell the user what's going on. Don't be afraid to tell them, hey, I tried to sync to your server, but it didn't work. This failed. I'm trying to recover. I'm going to try again in a few seconds. Right? Explain what's happening. Don't assume that your users understand all the stuff that you understand. Right? The apps are complex, explain to them. And then listen to your team. This is the last thing I'll say, and I think it's really important. We try to hire really, really smart people. So it would be dumb to not listen to them. Right? We went through all these interviews. We go through a lot of screening. Like if you come in at VMware for a developer position, you have a meeting with the managers, you have a technical interview, you have a programming assignment, you have a lot of steps to get through. It's not like just you come in one day, you whiteboard a few things, okay, you're hired, great. No, there's a huge barrier to kind of come in. So we really try to screen the smartest people we can find, which is the reason I'm here in Bulgaria. But once you've hired them, if you don't listen to them, what are you doing? Right? They can tell you what's going on. They can tell you, hey, I've been looking at this code, this part of the app is really fragile. This part of the app we need to refactor. Not because I want to, because I think we need to. Right? And let's make that a priority. Let's make that happen. Okay, so that's what I have for that piece, which is the 8 things we did wrong and 8 things that we did right that you should copy. And I have a few more extra details, because part of the stuff is supposed to be going through Objective-C to Swift. Right? And some of you are like, no, it's a Swift meetup, but I still like Objective-C better. I love Objective-C, it's really fun. I love Swift too. You can use both. You can coexist. And the trick for us to moving from Objective-C to Swift was to adopt new versions as fast as possible. Nobody likes to have that red badge on the App Store icon because Xcode wants to update and you can't update Xcode. You know what I'm talking about. You have an app that doesn't build on the latest version of Xcode, so you're holding back to a previous version of Xcode, and that badge is taunting you every day. Like, hey, you know, there's a 2 gigabyte update that you could do while you're on company Wi-Fi. It'll be really fast, but it will break your builds. So we tried to get everyone on the latest Xcode within a week of release, of GA release. So we try to just have time for updating our apps to Swift. Yes, this means that in early versions of Swift, we had 4,000 build errors. Yes. And we had crazy merges, and we had to change a method implementation across, 200 classes and a pull request. It was huge, but it was a very simple change. The same change, hundreds of times. Finding replacements really well. If everybody's motivated to be on the latest Xcode, then it's much easier to get your app there. And you guys are developing bigger teams. A lot of times you're taking things from other teams, and they may not have the time to update. And so our team would say, yeah, but this library that we pull from this team, they're too busy, they don't have time to update this. We'd say, so they have a repository, just commit the updates. We're just updating Swift versions. Go ahead and branch and commit and send the commit, and then we can use that updated version. So we've done some of that. Last but not least, you guys know when WWDC is, right? Done. It's always in June. You're not planning to ship a whole bunch of big features in the end of June, are you? Right? You should be watching the videos. You should be trying out iOS 13. Right? If dark mode ships, you should be testing it out with your apps and seeing how that works. So there are certain things that happen at the same time every year, right? And it makes sense to plan around it. Just like here in Bulgaria, you don't want to plan around having a lot of development done around Easter and the week after Easter, right? Nobody was showing up to work. So you have to know those things and plan around. Hey, May is a really busy month. Like this Friday, right? These guys aren't showing up to work, right? It's a holiday here for you guys. So you have to know about that, but also know about platform-specific things, right? Know what Google iOS if you're doing Android. For iOS, it's more important to talk about WWDC. You know when that is. It's in June. Hopefully some of you got tickets. And plan around that. Plan to catch up with those latest videos. So that's what I had. I hope that was in-depth enough. Give you some advice on mistakes that we did.